As I'm sure most of you all already know by now, I've been covering this war over in the Middle East between Israel and Gaza very, very closely. And every single day, it becomes increasingly clear to me that this conflict is the next big thing. It's become increasingly clear to me day by day that this conflict between Israel and the Palestinians is the new current thing. Now, I'm sure some of you are sitting back wondering, what do you mean this is the next big thing? What do you mean this is the new current thing? Well, let me explain. Unless you have been living under a rock for the last 5 or 6 years, chances are you've noticed that every few months, every couple of months, there's this new current thing that everyone pretends to care about. Every 6 or 7 months, there's this new big thing, this new movement, this new social movement, or something along those lines that everyone pretends to care about. They get in a frenzy, they get in an uproar. You have people changing their ways of life. You have people protesting and rioting in the streets every couple of months. For the last 5 or 6 years, it's become repetitive. It's a pattern at this point. Every couple of months, they trot out the new next big thing. Everyone pretends to care about it until they introduced the new current thing that everyone pretends to care about. We had the BLM movement. Anyone remember that? When people were protesting against police brutality and they decided, hey, the best way to protest is to steal flat screens from Target and to burn down local fast food restaurants. Yeah, that never made sense, did it? And then it turned out that the leaders of the BLM organization were like stealing money and buying $1 million houses and things like that. Yeah, we remember how that went. Well, it's happening again on our city streets across America and throughout Western civilization, all in the name of free Palestine. Also, of course, we had the beer bug, right? You still have people to this day that refuse to go outside and breathe fresh air. You still have people running around, driving around in the car by themselves with masks on. And then, of course, we transitioned into the war with Ukraine. People who never even knew Ukraine existed suddenly were flying Ukrainian flags in their Twitter bios. And now the new current thing has dropped. And that new current thing is the Israel versus Palestine conflict. Now, this conflict has been going on well before I was born, well before you were born. And for the most part, you didn't hear anyone crying about it and talking about it. You didn't see protests in the streets about it. But now it's the new current thing. And everyone's going to pretend to care. You're going to see rioting and protest in the street. People are going to use this as an excuse to just go out there and be chaotic. They're going to use this as an excuse to go loot businesses. They're going to use this as an excuse to assault people. They're going to use this as an excuse to run amok throughout America and throughout Western civilization, because at its core, these movements that keep forming, they're not genuine. At their core, it's anti-America. That's the one thing all of these movements have in common. Okay? We went from people hiding behind their COVID mask during the BLM protest to now people are going to be wrapping their heads in scarves as if they're actually Palestinian, when the majority of them are white soy boys that are, and women, of course, that go to random colleges and universities throughout America. Most of these people have their wealthy parents pay their way through college. They come out completely useless, yet they are indoctrinated by various terrorist groups and you name it. But you see, politicians have helped form these movements. Corporations have helped form these movements. You know, social justice, fighting against the man, it's always been anti-America. big corporations. Yet during the BLM protest, all of the big corporations supported BLM. That should have told you everything you needed to know about that movement. But you see, these politicians and these corporations that wanted to use these movements to their advantage to intimidate people, to maybe convince people to vote a different way than what they were planning on voting. They wanted chaos in the streets so people didn't feel comfortable. They wanted to use these groups to intimidate everyday Americans and everyday people throughout Western civilization, right? Well, now these movements are turning on them. You see, these woke, crazy psychopaths, they always turn on themselves. They always eat themselves. They live by a very different set of standards and morals than we do. They like to go out there and virtue signal, and they like to act all holier than thou, like they care about these movements or that movement or this or that, when in reality, they're narcissists. And in reality, most of them are kind of the unwanted outcast of society, which is why they cling to these movements, because they have nowhere else to go. Trust me, if you had a woman at home, you'd probably rather be there. Or if you're a lady and you had a nice husband at home, maybe a nice family, you would probably rather be there than being in the streets of NYC in the cold, screaming bloody murder about a situation that you really know nothing about at all. But as I said, these groups, they're turning on themselves. This Palestinian-Israel conflict has been really interesting because now we're seeing these same movements, these same groups that were formed a few years ago turn against the very people that helped create them, that helped fund them, that helped fuel them. The same politicians and the same corporations that funded these crazy lunatics, that helped create these crazy groups, that helped promote these groups via social media algorithms. Now, these groups are turning on their creators. It's like Frankenstein's monster. If you know anything about me, you know I'm a big horror fan. And I love classic horror. I love universal monsters. And right now, we're watching a universal monster. We're watching Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster, turn against the doctor. I don't know about you all, but I thought it was hilarious the other day when these Free Palestine protesters stormed into BlackRock's building and they started protesting in the lobby at BlackRock. And now, you guys will not believe this one, but Joe Biden, he's on the way back home to Delaware. I'm sure all of you all can't believe that. But guess what, folks? Joe Biden has a welcoming party waiting for him at his home. Earlier today, a large group formed. And I don't know how many people are out there. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of people as we speak. They are marching towards Biden's house in Delaware. By the time you're watching this, they will have already made it there. They probably have the place surrounded. And they're screaming out things like Genocide Joe or We'll remember in November, basically saying, hey, we're not going to vote for you. These people are now turning on Joe Biden, and I think it's hilarious watching the same movement that was used to prop this guy up, the same movement that was used to prop him up is now being used to tear him down. And I fully believe, regardless if you support the guy or not, I fully believe that the Democratic Party is done with Joe Biden. I don't think they want him running again. And maybe this is just one of their ways to go ahead and get rid of him and kick him to the curb. But I want to go ahead and show you a couple of clips of what's happening out there And then, of course, I'll be right back with more thoughts.
Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
See, we have a good amount of...
Up to you, right here. This is the back. We don't want. You guys hear me? I heard the message. Please for that. We have a constitutional right to fully come back. Free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine! We charge you with genocide! Biden, you can't hide! Biden, you can't hide! You signed off on genocide! You signed off on genocide!
Now, I've made this clear several times on my channels that I'm not pro-Israel, I'm not pro-Palestine. I don't really have a dog in this fight. I just don't want America to get involved any further than they already are, which is pretty heavily involved. But I'm not super pro-Israel, super pro-Palestine. And I understand that everyone has their own thoughts on the situation. I definitely don't agree with what Hamas did on October 7th, but I don't agree with a lot of what Israel's been doing to Gaza since then either. So even though I'm not pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, I am very anti whatever this movement is that's forming right here in America and in other countries as well. I am anti watching people commit acts of violence in the streets of America due to whatever's going on in Gaza. I am anti watching people riot and protest and tear down American flags and desecrate our monuments. I am anti watching people on the streets harass everyday Americans as they try to make it to work. I'm anti all of that. But at the same time, even though I am anti all of that, it's interesting watching this play out. It's kind of funny just sitting back and watching these people turn on themselves and eat themselves. It is an interesting sight to see, and I'm really wondering what comes of it. Regardless of how you feel about the situation, regardless of what side you may be on, can we at least acknowledge that this is interesting? We are living in some interesting times, and watching all of this play out is kind of crazy in a way. But for now, I want to know what you think about all of this. Surely you have some thoughts and opinions. Feel free to share them in the comments below. If you would like to support the channel, you could do so via Super Thanks. But make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all very soon in the next video. And